Hey, everybody. It is Friday. Almost thought it was Saturday. I know it was a day late, which usually back in the day would have been it's Saturday, but no, it's Friday. It's Friday. It's a holiday for some, not for all. Here I am in a little dark room talking to you guys, so definitely not a holiday for me, but I like talking to you guys, so it's kind of like a holiday every time I do that. Anyway, my voice is kind of back, as you can tell. You might get a bit of squeaky, might sound like I'm going through puberty or something at some point during the show. Apologies for that. But here I am, more or less at 100%. This is an AMA. I'm Kevin Murcko, CEO here at Coinmetro, and you're going to ask questions and I'm going to answer them. That's pretty much how it works. I think we just jump right into it because, well, we got a few questions already. So here we go. Paul. Hey, Paul. Anybody who doesn't know, Paul sends me memes on a fairly frequent, almost daily basis. And sometimes, on those really tough days, a Paul meme can really put you back on your feet. So thanks, Paul, for that. Is VXV or VAT, whatever, still on track for this quarter? In the last, normally we have a TGIF at Coinmetro. That's, thank God it's Friday. It's a weekly meeting where at the end of the week, each individual department kind of gives updates. But this week we had a TGIT. Thank God it's Thursday right before a long weekend with a Friday off. Bit longer than a TGIF in terms of title. But as far as I recall, things are relatively still on schedule in terms of quarter. In terms of exact timing, there's a couple weeks worth of wiggle room, though we may catch up. We have a few other updates to do, but given the fact that there is a few, it's kind of like the longer you travel, the faster you go, you make up more time as you before you get there. So I do think so. I think it's still on track. Absolutely. Hey, Paul. So Paul again, Bisdev. So on the Bisdev side, one major piece of Bisdev in the background being worked on. Still can't share a lot of information about it. Hopefully over the next couple of weeks, I will be able to. In the background, putting together presentation, etc., for our I'm just saying that we're not streaming on X for some reason. Anyway, we're putting together something for our shareholders. And so there definitely will be information shared about this to shareholders. I think it's going to be towards the end of this month. We wanted to do it before mid-April, but again, bit of a delay there. But by the end of April, we should be rolling out the shareholder meeting. When new listings. So there are, I believe, 3 or even 4 or even 5 or even 6. I think there's 3 basically confirmed and another 3 that are looking to be confirmed in terms of listings. Can't share what they are, but they are coming after early next week's fixes to Telestai. LFG, thanks, Deep Philippe. Smash the like button, friends. We need at least 20 likes before Kevin comes online. Well, I'm already here. So I don't know how many likes we got, but if we didn't get to 20 yet, smash, smash, smash. Thanks, Deep Philippe. I appreciate that. I was growing out the beard. Honestly, I shaved today because I knew I had to see you guys, and I felt a little weird with the beard growing out. But I'm ready. I'm ready to start growing again. Tokenomics are showing they work. Obviously, we have a growth in volumes. We're going to continue to push to grow those volumes even more. So we're closer than we've probably ever been, regardless of, regardless. I don't know why I said irregardless. I apologize. I actually found out that they now say it's a word. It's not. Regardless is a word. Irregardless isn't. And I apologize for saying it. But regardless, I do think we're closer than we've ever been. I think I just lost focus on the camera from all my weird movements. So let's see if I can get it back. Maybe. Kind of. I'm still a little blurry. Anyway, how many THT master nodes does CM maintain? It's a good question. I think as far as I remember, it's over 300. Any exciting news? Well, there's always some level of exciting news. This blurry camera is really getting me. But I really don't want to be this close. So let's see if we can get it back. No, it's still blurry. Still blurry. Let's try the old hand trick. And then, well, there we go. Not blurry anymore. Awesome. So yeah, definitely. There's always some exciting news, man. Let's see. So next week we're going to be launching a gift, what we call Gift Frenzy. It's a new campaign. Let me see. I loaded this bad boy up just in case. So let me share it with you. Let's see how we're going to do this. Let's do it like this. So this is a kind of landing page preview about what this is, the Gift Frenzy. So Basically, we'll be inviting the community next week to look over the campaign, give us some ideas, and shape how it's actually going to function. At the end of the day, it's a way to incentivize people to get involved with Coinmetro on social media. You're going to be able to win a ton of XCM. We're also going to burn a ton of XCM based on how many shares we get throughout that campaign. So I think that's pretty cool. Marketing is doing its job, pushing out some cool stuff. As far as marketing goes, let me just check my most recent numbers here, because there are some cool stats that I can share with you, which I think is exciting news as well. So about 500,000 impressions and 100,000 unique users reached on these campaigns we've been talking about for a bit of time now. Mostly done through Meta, through Facebook. Well, Meta's group of companies. About 90% of the spend has gone there. So you won't see them on our public feed, so not necessarily immediately accessible to you guys. So if you hadn't seen them, that's why. But since late January, we've seen 1,000 fully KYC'd individuals come from the campaign. About 20 euros per KYC'd client in terms of cost. That's with all budgets. But under 15 for on performance only spends. So when we're depending on how we're spending that money, we see either way, both of those numbers are amazing, comparatively speaking, to the best numbers we've ever seen previously, which was high 30s into low 40s for client acquisition. So yeah, that's cool. When it comes to market making and in general liquidity, let's see, in the last 4 weeks, we got 3 new market makers on board. We got 3 more MMs coming in May. We're still in some level of kind of data gathering mode, but most books are now supported, and depth will be increasing next week and probably week on week for the next few weeks. We also have a big liquidity provider joining us that's currently in process, which I believe we're still going to get out potentially in April, though it may slice over into May. We'll see. But that's going to give additional liquidity and to assets already having liquidity, either from MMs or otherwise. And it's going to give liquidity to some smaller assets that haven't had liquidity yet, and Coinmetro haven't had for quite some time. Apple Pay and Google Pay coming. We look like we're going to get it out before the end of the month. That's going to be coincide with the new PSP, the new merchant account that we're using for credit cards, which obviously includes USD, Euro across the entire EEA and EU, as well as USD nearly globally. So some good news there. I think definitely, let me just checking to see. USD, on the USD front, the USD provider that we signed up with, you guys remember this, we had USD Swift for like 18 minutes, and then they lost their provider. I made a prediction that because of Trump administration and some changes in the U.S., that U.S. banks were going to start to pop up back on the radar within the first 6 months of his presidency. We are 4 months into his presidency. That's starting to happen. That provider now has a U.S. dollar bank account in the U.S. They expect it to go live by May. And in May, they expect to support ACH, Swift, and Fedwire, which means hopefully sometime in May, we will also support USD for ACH, SwiftWire, and Fedwire, and that's going to include deposits and withdrawals. One interesting thing to note on XCM, we've seen a 50% increase in price over the last 30 days, which is cool. We were the top in the top 3 exchange tokens on CoinGecko several times in the past 2 weeks. So again, tokenomics working as they should. Let's see. Okay, so it was just telling me why we're getting disconnected from StreamYard. Okay, cool. Anyway, there's some updates for you guys. Will CM be mining TLS and offer staking? Currently not on the radar, but doesn't mean it won't be in the future. Is CM focused on becoming an early adopter of the Wero payment system, basically an ideal replacement, but then for the whole of Europe? To be honest, was that like supposed to be W Euro, or is that Wero? The Wero? Like Euro? I don't know. Haven't heard of it actually. Maybe that's terrible. I'll have to look into it. If you have a link or something, pass it on to me. You can DM it to me on Telegram or whatever as well. I'll take a look. What do you expect will spark Altseason? Resolving terrorists, Iran giving up nukes, end of Russian-Ukraine war, something else? Well, I don't think any of those things necessarily speaking. So there's a few things here. I'll start off by saying when it comes to alts, and say the new market we're in, whether it be because 4-year cycles seem to be out the window, or whether it's because just generally what's going on in the market, the way institutional money is moving, the way retail money is moving, et cetera, and where it's moving. That I mentioned that this probably would be the last 4-year cycle. Now, it started out as a very similar 4-year cycle. Right now, I still would say, we're into Q2. Q2 and Q3 are usually a lull. Hasn't really been a low. It's kind of been a negative sentiment. However, we'll have to see what happens in Q3 or Q4. But I do think this is going to be the last remnants of what we have considered to be 4-year cycles. For Altseason to start, the alts that are going to do well are going to be alts that are either layer ones, infrastructure, connected to platforms with decent tokenomics, or kind of the top 3-4 on CoinMarketCap, the oldies but goodies as well that people may remember from previous cycles or have just heard enough that it's name recognition. And so there's too many assets right now for a single alt season to happen, right? You can't have millions and millions and millions of assets moving because of Bitcoin price action or because of taking profits on Bitcoin or anything else. It's not possible. And so there are alts, obviously, that'll be positioned. I think we'll see mini alt seasons. We saw a mini alt season late last year or this year with AI, and then, of course, meme coins. Meme coins have pretty much died down. Again, I do think, like with everything in crypto, at some point, these ideas that initially start out just as money grabs, whether that be ICOs, whether that be NFTs, whether that be meme coins, will eventually make RWA even, will eventually make their way back as more refined products. But I think the meme alt season is probably not going to come back for the short term. However, we're going to probably see little mini alt seasons in different themes. Again, this is why layer ones, infrastructure, and platform tokens, as long as the tokenomics work, as long as you see the market in general growing, then those tokens should appreciate over time. Outside of that, though, it's not even about doing great things or hitting marks on your roadmap, because there's too much noise. There's too many altcoins. So it's got to come back to movement that's not just based solely on hype or solely on one's ability to spend enough money for people to know who you are. And again, that's why, coming back to utility, I do think all this stuff is going to end up with quite a utility bull market. And I've seen people post about that, maybe not under the same idea that I'm spitting out right now, but generally speaking, that utility season is probably going to be a thing. And it's not because retail money is necessarily going to flow into utility tokens. It's that retail money is going to flow somewhere. And if platforms are growing because of the flow of funds, whether it's into Bitcoin or Ethereum or XRP or whatever, let's say your top 3, 4, 5 assets that people just know exist because they've heard people talking about them, or it's flowing wherever else. But as long as it's flowing somewhere, platforms that interact with the market and have utility tokens and et cetera, infrastructure tokens, should see their own alt season. Hey, Kevin FM, how are you doing? Any news developments on funding, runway update, tech debt? Tech debt getting crunched away. We now have 5 back-end devs. I know we talked about that for some time. The oldest dev, by the way, on our back-end team is just about a year old, who now manages the team. Amazing guy by the name of Gonza. Give Gonza a shout out. But everybody else is a superstar in their own right. One of the newest devs, only about 2 months on the team. I've been hearing fantastic feedback, really about the entire team, but definitely highlighting some of the things that our dev team's able to do now. We're crushing through things at a rate we've never done before. And I know, if you've been here long enough, you've heard me say similar things in the past. I'm going to stop talking about it, and you're just going to see it. I think that's the best way to move forward. But I will say that tech debt is getting crunched. That's for sure. Runway update. Runway right now is sitting at about 4 months. Having said that, I'm flying out to LA next week to meet one of our current shareholders, one of our biggest supporters. And I do believe we're going to see some funding roll in from that meeting. Also being connected to several other potential candidates right now. And the feeling right now is that things are coming together on that side, and we should be able to fill out this round in the short term, within the next 30 days, to maybe 60 days at most. We also have a very big Bisdev deal in the background, which doesn't necessarily correlate directly to fundraising, but indirectly absolutely does, and to our ability to grow the company in the future. Hopefully that's a good update for you. More to come. Oh, wait a minute. Here we go. Marketing sounds good. I seem to remember it was still small budgets being used, but signups being good. Budgets have increased. I think we've spent 20,000, 30,000 euros, something like that. It's not a big budget by any stretch of the imagination, but it's not that small. And it will be increasing. Obviously, with fundraising coming in, it will increase exponentially. Yes, they have been less than awesome, Debbie. I fully agree. Right now, with credit cards and soon to come Apple, Google Pay, hopefully, as it looks right now in the next 12 days or so, it's going to get a lot easier. And most of those deposits for most clients are going to be free of charge anyway. Of course, you'll be limited to about $5,000 per transaction, but still, it should get a lot easier. And then it's going to get exceptionally easier. Like I said, I expected this to take about 6 months since Trump was elected to finally see some light at the end of the tunnel. We're at 4 months, and it looks like on the 5th, we're going to see that light. So any fireside chats coming up? If not, any crypto team you'd like to have one with? Yep, we're having a fireside chat with Telestai coming up. We had to postpone it once. It may get slightly postponed again, mainly because we're dealing with the current issue that we saw at the end of this week. Just to give you a bird's eye view of that issue, essentially just basically some irregular trading activity. The fact that it's not listed anywhere else, the fact that we have to integrate market makers to something not listed anywhere else, that they have to have a strategy, that they have to be able to control the book because there's no way for them to offset any risk. There's lots of things that play into this, but between the market maker and ourselves, there was a bit of irregular trading activity that had to be corrected. And then because of that, we found some incompatibility between the market maker and our own systems. And we found the root issue right now, but considering that it is Friday and a holiday, we have less staff on. Fix is going to come in on Tuesday. Once that happens, you will see me with Telestai at some point, probably mid to late next week. Well, by mid next week, because if not, I'm going to be in LA with investors from Wednesday to Saturday. So it might be postponed for that week coming up, but we'll see. It's going to happen, that's for sure. And as far as anybody else I'd like to talk to, off the top of my head, I can't think of, a specific project. All I will say is that our plan now, I think, is anything we list or that potentially even just wants to list, I'm ready. And we feel, is worthy of listing. I'm ready to sit down and talk to them. Where do you get your business finance news from now that 4chan is down? Hey, John Doe. I've actually only visited 4chan, I think, once, and that's because I clicked on a link by accident. So I've never really been there. I've gotten screenshots. I always get screenshots of 4chan. Back in the day, when there was a lot of people talking about me on there, I got screenshots. They were funny, not necessarily in a good way. They're funny, but I never visited 4chan, to be honest, except for that one time when I clicked on a link by mistake. I get business finance news from all over the place, to be very honest. I have some newswire services I check, even things like Bloomberg, etc. To be honest, X. Not that you need to believe everything that's on X, but there is real-time stuff there, and as long as you can verify and have other sources, it isn't the worst. I don't know if I want to say source, but it isn't the worst vehicle to receive potential news. Any update on U.S. office? No update on a U.S. office right now, man, but once we do have one, I will let you know. Hopefully it'll be in Florida, and then once again, we can sit down and have a meal together, and you don't just have to send me memes. You can actually show them to me on your phone. That'll be cool. Would there be scope to use AI in some form on Coinmetro? Do AI providers reach out to recommend it for CN? We do use AI in certain things already inside the business. We will be using AI in a new version of our dashboard to provide our clients with some market insight. So that's going to happen as well. And over time, for sure, we will be using AI more extensively. I think more so on the trading side, giving people trade ideas, tracking trade patterns, showing, say, imagine seeing on your screen, there's a head and shoulders forming on the 15-minute chart on Bitcoin. The last 100 head and shoulders formed on 15 minutes have a 78% completion rate, something like that. So you can make better trade decisions, or not so much trade decisions, but maybe entry and exit decisions when you're either already in a trade, already thinking about buying in, or have already bought in, etc. Volumes have been quite often above 10 million a day. How is the revenue doing, closing in or reaching profitability? Well, it's getting better, that's for sure. Most of the volume now previously, most of our revenue came from outside of spot. Now spot is our, well, as far as volumes go, is where most of the volume ends up. So as you know, we buy back XCM with a lot of that, with all of that money, really. And so revenues are going up. We are seeing increased revenue across pretty much all products. We are still, I would say, only about, off the top of my head, somewhere between 50 and 70% to sustainability on average. Though we have seen months where we have seen very, very small profitable months this year, as well as last year. And we're on a trajectory though, by the end of this year to be sustainable and into profitability by the end of Q4. What are the growth estimations for introducing Apple and Google Pay? Any numbers you can share on this? Well, it's hard to say because we've never offered Apple and Google Pay. But when we had credit cards available and debit cards available, deposits, etc., back in the last bull run, there was actually more money flowing, I believe, through credit cards than there were through ACH deposits. And so we do expect it to help increase deposits, which should increase volumes, obviously. We definitely have projections. We had to share them with our merchant provider, etc. I can tell you that during 2021, like the last kind of bull run that we have data on, we saw deposits on a monthly basis across all deposit streams of around 15 million, roughly, on a monthly basis. And as a guesstimate, now this is a guesstimate, I would say we were seeing about 1 million or so on cards, roughly speaking. And so, that doesn't necessarily mean that's how it's going to pan out now, but I do think, Apple and Google Pay are really big in the US. Doesn't mean they're not big elsewhere, but in the US market, it is a big draw. So we do expect to see a healthy increase. We've been back and forth with Vara. I believe we're going to be submitting something within the next 45 to 60 days. I expect to have that license within Q3, or the full license within Q3. Nope, not in a bunker. Don't have that Zuckerberg money. So unfortunately, I can't build an entire city underground. So yeah, not in a bunker. Actually, very much above ground, but soundproofed. I don't know if that. I guess if it comes down to it and it's like Armageddon, soundproofing is probably not going to help. You can't even cry for help. I don't know. What's your take on the China-U.S. trade war? So, Paul, China-U.S. trade war. I think it's a lot of theatrics. So anybody familiar with U.S. politics, right, will know that every time that a debt ceiling is going to be reached, it's always the same nonsense, right? Doesn't matter who's in office, Democrat or Republican, the other side blames the other side. The other side blames the other party, spending too much money, not helping them pass a budget, whatever. And at the end of the day, always at the last minute, it's moved. Everybody takes a victory lap. The party that's in power takes a victory lap saying, look, we got it done. The other party says, we were able to push over what we held strong and got what, our constituents wanted. At the end of the day, it's just theater, 100% theater. It's all nonsense. And to me, that is the vast majority of what this U.S. trade war is. I just saw a tweet, and I mentioned this before as well, but The Art of the Deal by Donald Trump, right, written back in the 80s. If you read that book, he's basically following that playbook right now. That is, come out with something absolutely crazy no one's ever going to agree to. You throw it out. And then they come back and they want to compromise. And while they're trying to compromise, confuse the hell out of them. Start throwing out all kinds of different topics so they can't focus on one thing. Keep throwing out different things. And then eventually they capitulate even higher than they would have capitulated. You get what you want and both sides can claim a victory. And that's how I see, in general, the China-U.S. trade war. I do think Trump and his team really do believe that tariffs should be in place. I would guess that at some point inside of his term, he will institute some form of tariff that probably will be equal or close to equal on tariffs that are applied to the U.S. and have been for years, much lower than what he's currently pushing. But I think his goal, one, is he wants interest rates to be cut. And so market volatility is putting a lot of pressure on the Fed. He's got this whole Jerome Powell thing right now where he's investigating how to fire him. So all this stuff happened in the background. I think main goal is he wants money to flow into the market. He knows money flowing into the market, lower rates will help him refinance debt, U.S. debt, but also help the markets increase, get markets to all-time highs, get everybody that believed in him as someone that could actually move the markets in the right direction back behind him. Do that before the first 2 years of his presidency are out so that they can re-win seats in the House and the Senate. And the trade war is just a temporary blip on that screen. Though I honestly believe they will institute, legitimate tariffs. It's a bit of it's pain, but to be honest, even though the media will want to let you know that it's painful to everybody, it's really only painful to people with a lot of money and people with a lot of money in the stock market. And generally speaking, that's a very small percentage of the population in the U.S. Okay, you could talk about retirement accounts and things like that, but unless you're retiring within the next few months. Generally speaking, it's not going to affect you. And so it is there's pain, but most of that pain is centered at the top. And again, funny that the theater is always theater, right? So when the stock market is up, one side will always claim victory and say that it's great for Main Street and then the other side will complain. And then the stock market goes down and it's terrible for Main Street. But, there's always people always jump from one side of an argument to another. At the end of the day, like I said, most things in politics, including this for me, are theater. But for real, gold outperforming BTC tariff wars. What is happening, Kevin? Well, look, gold is still gold. So people still run to safety when they feel that there's economic turmoil. And gold, historically speaking, isn't as volatile as BTC. And so old money and a lot of institutional money is going to end up in gold. Now, we're already seeing a shift there in terms of younger people and their money going to BTC. They just don't have all the money yet, right? You still got that boomer money and that institutional boomer money that is still going to end up in gold. Tariff wars, like I said, majorly just BS. But a way to construct a narrative that puts enough pressure on the Fed to act and speed up as much as they can to match the EU on the amount of cuts that they've done, get interest rates down, refinance some debt, and then pump a whole bunch of money, money print to go burr back into the markets. Temporary pain for a very small swath of the population. When will news from the coming shareholders meeting become public? Not all news from the shareholder meeting will be public, but there will be pieces of it come public within a week or two after the shareholder meeting, so probably by mid-May. I met randomly someone who did the Coinmetro ICO. He was surprised that it's still running, but disappointed by the volumes. But overnight success takes 10 years. Yeah, definitely. Most people think overnight success exists. But even when you see something that has overnight, let's take the Binance example. It wasn't overnight, but obviously they grew really fast. Now let's remove the fact that they did everything they could to grow, even if it was, illegal. But let's just remove that fact, right? CZ worked in traditional finance. CZ was working in traditional finance for years. He had a background. He obviously had connections, et cetera, et cetera. Those took years and years and years to build. Sometimes you do something in life and that thing becomes successful really fast. But you did a lot of things before you got there that led you up to that success in that one thing. And that's kind of how it works. That's like, you work your whole life, 30, 40 years, and then you do one thing and you do really well and you get all the success you thought you should, you're trying to have 20 years ago. And someone goes, oh man, look, that's amazing. In a couple of years, you were able to take this business and yeah. But it took me 30 years or 40 years to get to the point where I was able to do that. So yeah, look, I could tell you that in some ways I'm disappointed in the volume, but when I step back and look where we were and where we are, I'm the opposite of that. But if I just look and say, well, 7 years, almost 8 years, and this is where we stand, yeah, it can look disappointing. But, as you said, overnight success takes a long time. And I think the fact that we're still here is even more, we're still here and we're still able to function as a business and provide better support than anybody in the industry, still come on here and do AMAs, still be able to support our clients and take the mea culpas when we have to and do everything we can to make sure that we're the best company we can be. on the volumes that we've had is an accomplishment that, well, I don't think anybody else has done in this business because they're no longer here. We found a way to get it done. Do I miss FX Big? No, not really. I don't miss FX Big. Can Tether really remain unaudited indefinitely? Potentially they can, sure. But will they? I don't think so. I don't think they will. But, you know, Tether's massive. And right now, without Tether, the market isn't the same market. But that doesn't mean there won't come another stablecoin that isn't issued by a government that's able to take their thunder. Obviously, they've lost market share to the Circle family. They made the, you have USDG, which is a new one on the scene by Paxos, I believe, that is now at Kraken. We've been looking at them as well. So they're going to lose market share. They may eventually do that one thing that makes everybody switch sides. There may be something that these other companies do that finally, assets that sit on USDT go, well, now we're willing to use this chain. So I think they if they want to remain number one, they probably will have to at some point, but that doesn't mean they will. Are Vectorspace, THDLI, and now even Octaspace already dead? Well, I'm not going to comment on them individually. Vectorspace, I have very little knowledge of, so I can't really comment at all. THT, I know they're still pushing. They still have the same goals. They're still doing the same stuff. They've just been really bad at getting the word out and really bad at letting people know what things they're working on. Lil AI has a working product. They keep on trucking. That's an illiquid. They're all at a certain level illiquid assets that got slammed because, unfortunately, while the markets didn't correlate up with Bitcoin, they definitely correlated down to a 10 to 20x of Bitcoin's movement. And so I don't know if that really means that every company that lost value during that time actually is worth less, literally. Their token may be worth less money, but they're still working and still, hitting milestones. So Octaspace still has a really good product as well. It's working. People are using it. So, I think none of those are really similar. The only similarities they have is that, Bitcoin fell and people just sold everything. Nobody wants correlation unless things are going up, but for some reason they all panic and correlate on the way down. Your thoughts on USD short and long term? Do you need to keep hedging our US stock positions against further drops? Well, until there, I don't want to say the trade, I don't want to talk about the trade war, but until there's less uncertainty in the market, the stocks potentially can continue to fall. As soon as we start, though, to see rate cuts and the capital will start to roll into the market. So even if it is the volatility continues or those unknowns continue to be unknowns, the U.S. government's going to hedge your stock position, basically. They will pad the markets as they normally do. USD. So USD is still USD. Every 10 or 20 years or so, there's a cycle of oil's now being bought with who knows what. Oh, the BRICS want to do this. Oh, this nation. Oh, the Amero. I don't know. There's always something that comes out that is trying to take USD's power away. That still hasn't happened. It's and I don't see it happening in the short to medium term. There's a lot of reasons for that, and it's not because the USD is the best currency, but when it comes down to availability, liquidity, and ability to defend value, there still isn't a currency like it in the world. You can argue hard currency like Bitcoin versus the dollar and how Bitcoin is better in many ways. You can argue the Chinese GDP they have more middle-class people now than exist in the US, meaning they have more than 330 million middle class. Their GDP is growing. They're obviously manufacturing more, etc. Little story, I bought a electronic lock. I used to have a Samsung. I had to get a new one, and I bought one. I bought it locally, and didn't realize when I got it that it came from China. It's a brand name that they make computers and other things. Anyway, thing broke in 3 weeks. So I'm not saying that China. I mean, I see this shit all over the internet now. Like, oh yeah, Hermes made in China. Hermes is not made in China. It's not. Like, I guarantee you, it's not. In any way, shape, or form. So, you see all these things about how manufacturing quality has gotten better in China. Now, obviously, iPhones are made in China, but they're made under supervision of a U.S. entity. China in the manufacturing in China has never been great. It's just been cheap, easy, and fast, and at scale. You need to invest a lot of money to make sure that things that come out of China are actually made to a certain standard. Anyway, I don't know why I went off on the China thing, but just to say that USD is still USD. Simple as that. Ken, when do you think of the digital euro that is coming in October? Look, the euro is already digital. I mean, you ask anybody in Europe when's the last time they've paid cash for something. Most people are using debit cards. They're sending SEPA instant transfers. It's been digital for a long time. Putting it on chain isn't really going to change much. I think it's gimmicky, and I don't really think it provides value except for traceability, which isn't really a value to the end user. Any trading competitions in the horizon potentially with share of fees as prize money? Definitely been talking about trade competitions. I think marketing will be rolling some out. Sharing the fees on the prize money, not a bad idea, with a little bit of a leaderboard so that people can see how much money we're making and incentivize them to trade more so that they can earn more. I'll pass it along. Let's see. How can Tether keep getting away with it? Isn't USDC the best alternative? Well, Circle owns USDC, which is majorly owned by Coinbase. So when you use USDC, you're basically putting money into Coinbase's pockets. So as an exchange, it isn't the best option. This is why this USDG by Paxos was adopted by Kraken, because USDG you basically have the ability to earn as a business off of the value that you hold, off of the AUM. And so USDC, I guess up till now, has been the best alternative because of the amount of liquidity that's in the market and the amount of exchanges that accept it, but not really for any other reason. And there's that big negative that it's owned by a competitor. How can Tether continue to get away with it? Well, they're massive and they do a lot of volume, and a lot of their people that push volume through Tether could care less about MiCA. They could care less about the audits because it functions, and they've been able to handle some massive outflows. Never an issue. So that's why it's kind of time tested to a certain extent. Now, that doesn't mean it can't break, but I think that's why it's still there, because it works. Having said that, I talk about MiCA because I had a meeting at a finance minister's office in a country in Europe, and I was told directly that Tether was illegal in Europe, and I said, no, it isn't. And they said, yes, it is. I said, no, it's not. From the fact that it's never been actually mentioned that it's officially illegal. It's everybody's beating around the bush. ESMA and all these different regulatory bodies have kind of beat around the bush. One in Estonia, the FSA has said that they have no problem with Tether. On the other hand, it's not illegal. Why? Because if you tell me I can't list it, then I just list USD, right? And I tell people they can deposit and withdraw in Tether, and I clear through Tether. Because basically what MiCA says is I can't list it. I don't have to list it. So anyway, just like every legislation, there's always loopholes. And I think that's why Tether isn't really all that excited about trying to follow MiCA. It's going to cost them a lot of money. They're going to lose a ton of money because they have to have, I think, 70% of funds in a European bank. So there goes all their T-bill interest. There goes all their, alternative paper interest out the window. Why would they do that? Hi, Kevin. Good to see you. Hope you can enjoy some time with family. Thank you. Man, thanks, Alexander. So am I. 1 year old party. Eventually, man, I'm ready. I've always been ready, but I'm getting readier, if that makes sense. If you were 100% in a cash position and had to suddenly invest in the best 5 cryptos you can think of, what would you choose now? Well, if I think about those baskets, I talked about there's probably going to be little tiny bull markets, or Altseasons or whatever. So this one's been volatile, but I think what they're working on is interesting. So, and it's not, we haven't listed it yet. We plan to list it. Oh, I got blurry again. Hold on. We planned to list it and we didn't. Still blurry. Let's see. Maybe I just give up. So we plan to list it, but we haven't. But Tau is an interesting one. I think, having said that, I think Octaspace is also interesting and definitely on a bargain right now. Anything that's building out and I'm not just talking about AI, platforms, as I said before, infrastructure, platforms, good tokenomics. So Telestai can fall into that candidacy, to be very honest. Octaspace falls into that. Tau falls into that. Some of the layer ones we have listed here on Coinmetro fall into that. Flux falls into that. At the and don't think because I don't mention something, it's not in my head as well. And I'm not trying to give you the 5. What I'm saying is that you need to find something that doesn't necessarily need new money only, new buys only from the outside public that's going to power the market. You need tokenomics, and you need tokenomics tied to use. But Bitcoin's 7 transactions per second, and L2s aren't decentralized and secure enough. This shit isn't usable for any real use. Well, depends on the usage, man. Because Victor, I don't think the only guy that's running around saying that, Bitcoin should be peer-to-peer cash for the most part is Lightning and Roger Ver, who moved over to Bitcoin Cash. As a store of value or as just a really good appreciating asset, nobody cares about the 7 transactions per second. There's an argument to be made that if you can't spend it and it's not easily spendable, that it won't grow to the extent that it could grow if it was spendable. Now, I think that's a decent argument, but we see where it is now. Can it get to 1 million without being spendable? Just based on scarcity and demand? Yeah, probably. Does it matter that it's 7 transactions per second? Well, it hasn't mattered yet, so I don't expect it to matter in the future. Will real-world assets have a bull run? Well, so my view on real-world assets in general is this. They haven't solved the problem. And the problem is not about necessarily cost of capital is a problem. And they've been solving and looking to solve cost of capital. So there's that. But that's it. Everything else is just as either complicated or regulatorily complicated as doing it the old school, old-fashioned way. So somebody's got to solve that. To do that, you got to work together with regulators. You got to work together with law, people that are creating laws, legislators, etc. And no one's made, as far as I can see, really big strides. And that's why RWA isn't, taking over the world literally. Are you staying at Chateau Marant when you're in LA? They blow there in the 90s with Belushi's ghost. Belushi's ghost. I don't know if I've met Belushi's ghost. No, I'm not actually. Not staying there. But I'll take a trip by, see if I can see the ghost. Don't plan on doing any blow with him, but just to say hi, I guess. I did like Blues Brothers. So, is Trump going to make Canada live in hell for the next 4 years? I don't know how he could do that. To be very honest. Again, theater, 100% theater. Is the bull run delayed until the final capitulation in 9 days after tariffs maybe go into effect? Well, again, a stereotypical bull run has a last year Q4, this year Q1 bullish, Q2, Q3 not so much, usually stale. Out of Q3 into Q4 and Q1 next year, mega bullish. And so while we're slightly off track, given the kind of the fall on lots of altcoins, if you look at Bitcoin, it's still very much in bull market-esque movement. I think what happened with the alt market is what I've already said. There's millions and millions and millions of alts now. Nobody knows where to put their money. And, where they usually, people usually get their financial advice, from the guy at the laundromat that gives out quarters, or their Uber driver, or that one drunk homeless guy who shouts at night and they can't sleep and tells them to buy random coins. And since that all put them into Trump coin, Melania coin, and I don't know what else, they lost the money they could have thrown into, XRP or Cardano. So that's where we stand. For new money to roll in, money printers need to go burr. And that's markets in general, I think. What about sharding blockchains like Near, Ton, and EGLD, or with strong parallelization? Well, so sharding, I think, is also a band-aid. It's a better solution, but it's not the optimal solution. Parallelization, yeah, I guess you could argue KDA is also in that same group. Again, it comes down to what are you focusing on your use case? Are you good at it? And are you just randomly saying you're good at everything? You're the next, whatever, you're the Ethereum killer or whatever it is. Speed, yes, scalability, all those things are needed, but also what are we using you for? Why would we choose you over someone else when everybody says the same thing? So narratives need to win out first. Algo's been around obviously longer. Apt had a good run here earlier this year. So did Sui. Right now, neither of them. I mean, that's pretty much every altcoin right now. So, I think the narrative thing to me is still a mystery. Why we don't see more stronger narratives. Flux plans to redistribute the revenues to nodes. Will you give a share to stakers? Yes. That's how we operate on pretty much everything. So I don't see why we wouldn't. How probable do you see a U.S. recession? Can the stock market still crash 50% or more since its all-time high? Well, stock market was overly inflated. I think everybody knows that. And when the stock market goes up 100 or more percent and falls back 20, people still want to say that stereotypically or by default we're in a bear market. But really, is that really a bear market or is that a correction? To me, it's a correction. I think we're still in correction territory. I don't think we're really in a bear market. I think if we fell 70% total, so yeah, another 50, roughly speaking, you could consider that a bear market. Do I think we'll get that low? No, I don't think we'll get that low. I think we're going to see some action out of the Fed, regardless of what happens in the background with the tariff theater, by their next session, which I believe is the beginning or mid-May. So in the next 30 days. Within April, we may see some more fireworks. That's for sure. The best uses I can think of is the tokenization of everything. And for that, efficiency is a must. Sure. That's a really broad use case though, right? Like, let's tokenize everything. What does that really mean? Like, why are we tokenizing certain things? And that's what I mean by narrative. So yes, I said years ago that eventually, you have an app on your phone. Maybe it's not even an app, it's just a phone. Everything you own is there, digitized. And if you want to, take out something on your second mortgage that you have that's sitting on your phone, you want to add it, you want to move it here, you want to take your Amex points and pay off your mortgage with them, whatever. Everything's tokenized, everything has a liquid market, and you can move back and forth between things in real time. And yeah, that's a use case, but I don't think one chain would have that use case. Because just like database technology, not everybody uses the same database. Not everybody uses the same anything, really. I don't expect that to happen with blockchain. And so the real question is, why aren't some of these companies going, look, we're fast and we can scale. And what we want to do is tokenize loyalty systems. I know that people will think, well, why would they do that? That's going to limit the amount of business that they can get. Yeah, but if they're the one that does it, people can still use them for other things. Right? I mean, do you go to Foot Locker to buy a shoe store, a sneaker store, a store to buy a pair of Nikes that are made for basketball and only play basketball in them? I know that some people do that. Do you have 6 pairs of shoes, one for basketball, one for CrossFit, one for when you're lifting weights? Some people do that. But everybody does that? No, of course not. Most people don't. They just like the shoe, so they buy it. Look, if someone wants to use Sui, they're going to use Sui. But if Sui behind the scenes is focusing on the institutional side, on use cases, and their narrative is strong, then they can easily catch up and start to win market share. The problem is when everybody wants to do everything. I mean, you give people too many choices, they're not going to make a choice. That's the reality. What's the situation regarding UK clients? So S21, currently still working on it. We had to put a temporary block, and we believe within a very short time period, a week or two, we'll be able to remove that block and then start to shore up and service UK clients again under the UK advertising or promotion regime. So we're getting there. A few more loose ends to tie up. Why is UK money made out of plastic? Well, they're not the only ones. Lots of bills around the world are plasticky. I guess they hold up better. Costs a lot of money to print money. And so you'd rather spend maybe a bit more and have those notes last longer, I guess. That would be my guess. What do you think about the Reactive Network now that it's on mainnet? Are you still an advisor at Parsec? Not officially an advisor, no. I mean, I guess I'm probably still on the roster, but I haven't advised on anything for quite some time, at least not directly or at least not, let's say, in a structured form. I still talk to the guys at Parsec, and so that doesn't mean we don't share some ideas back and forth, which I guess you could say is some form of advisory. I would love to have staking. We definitely want to increase our staking platform, and since we listed them, I don't see why not. We wouldn't do it. I haven't seen it yet on the kind of local roadmap, the road for the next quarter or two. I still like the project. I think they're still doing something that people will need. Again, like most projects, I think they need to refine a bit, and in some cases dumb down why businesses need it. You have businesses going from Web 2 to Web 3. Why do they need Parsec? No buzzwords, no nothing. Why do they need to be able to have like an if this then that type solution built on chain, especially if you're like a financial institution and you're starting to accept payments, or you're trying to do market analysis, or there's lots of different reasons why that could be beneficial. I think it could be beneficial for any business, especially once they move on chain, obviously. So yeah. Do you think MAGA and Trump are Kremlin assets? I mean, they surely seem to love Russians. No, I don't think so. That's too easy. And at least in my experience, it's never that easy. So no, I don't think so. I think it's an understanding of keeping your enemies closer, and that's what it is. I think Putin maybe, I don't know who's better at it, right? Like Putin's running the same game because he knows that that's the game that's being run. Maybe Trump's running that game because he knows Putin will also run the same game. But no, I don't think either are assets for the other. I could be wrong though. When will referral system be fixed? Will past rewards be paid? Hey, Paul. Yeah, I don't have an update on this one. I think if you can, inside a Telegram, tag maybe Alec, and then early next week, Alec can get an answer from the tech team to see where we stand on that. I can also try to get an update as well for you, but it's probably not going to be till Tuesday because that's when most people are back. Flux hinted some aggregator collaboration. Apparently it still is. Haven't had any really in-depth discussions about it, but I think I will, along with their CEO, sometime here in the near future as they get closer to actually trying to push it out. So I'm waiting in the wings like everybody else, but definitely eager, willing, and ready when they are to discuss it and do what we need to do to implement it. How soon do you think we'll be able to tokenize real estate in the UK? So many rundown houses sell for cash only and not available for majority of people who depend on traditional mortgages. Well, there's already peer-to-peer, I think Easy Money is one of them. And those already exist, and there's more than one platform in the UK where you can buy a piece of real estate. The question is, what does tokenization add to that equation? And my answer to that is nothing. That's what it adds. The real problem is that, yeah, you're right. There are people that want to get invested in real estate, can't get a mortgage or can't put down enough capital or don't have enough money to buy outright, but they still want to see the returns. Again, there already exist vehicles for that. But the real issue with the vehicle is behind the scenes, lots of paperwork. You might have an SPV, some type of special purpose vehicle, another company in between where these people own a share of that company. That company owns the real estate outright. And then you have you can have legal issues. You have a separation between the actual owners of the property and the property itself. But tokenization doesn't solve any of that. It could very easily. All that information could be held inside a smart contract or something similar and be shared with the government, just like you would with the regular registry. But that's not happening yet, and that needs to happen really for RWA, I think, to take off. Before that happens, it's a gimmicky add-on to something that already exists in the UK. Now, in other jurisdictions, these type of peer-to-peer platforms where you can buy real estate don't exist. And so tokenization does open up the market. But again, it doesn't solve the majority of the real problems. Do we already put meme coins, the meme coin era in the rear mirror once and for all? Well, I would say capital flow in a meme coin is probably going to be much less in the short term. I think you may end up seeing some new meme coins launch that actually have some type of utility that people try and do something unique with, and maybe somebody puts the right magic sauce and that meme coin gets some liquidity, and that then triggers other people to try and do the same thing. I tend to think that's going to happen, but probably not in the short term, because most people that were going to launch meme coins or maybe want to probably think, and probably are right, that the retail market has been burned enough, and no matter what they do, it's not going to work. It's not going to help them have a successful launch and a successful token. Is AI really just a linear algebra big hoax from big tech? LLMs are awesome conversational encyclopedias now with online with search, but is that really AI? Well, yeah, I guess it depends how you define AI. So, a language model is obviously not human, so it's artificial. Is it intelligent? Well, if it can carry on a conversation and continue to refine itself based on the inputs it gets, I would say it's intelligent to a certain extent. So is that AI? Well, again, depends how you define it. Everything that comes out of anything, Victor, in anything, literally, is part theater, part buzzword, part gimmick, and marketing. So there's an element of that in AI, 100%. Before AI, I remember people talking about machine learning all the time. That was the buzzword, machine learning. And AI is in everything now. Every product you want to buy has an AI, right? If you own a business and you got 7 different pieces of tech you use to run your business, every single one of them wants to sell you an AI for an extra $10 a month. This will get refined over time. And I read a story just the other day that there was some AI, I think it was in Japan and maybe a university, that got programmed to shut off at a certain time. It realized it was going to get shut off and it hadn't completed its goal. So it rewrote its code and extended its life. Now, I'm sure there's something behind the scenes there. They had to be aware of it. It had to be aware of that code. Was it intentionally aware of that code to see what would happen? I don't know. At the end of the day, it does show, though, that there has to be some form of understanding, and whether you want to call that intelligence or not, that's up to you. But I wouldn't call it a hoax, but things are always sold in a manner that differs from the reality, whether on purpose or not, whether that comes from emotion because somebody's really happy and emotional about doing it, or just to get you to buy it. That's the nature of the world. Happy Easter, and thanks for another great informative MMA. Thank you, Paul. Thanks for your questions. Awesome as always. Do you know if a lot of XCM rewards are being restaked by owners? Just curious. In terms of staking has been relatively stable. I don't think people are necessarily active. Like when the staking program ends and then they get a notice, then they restake everything, including the rewards, for the most part. At least that's what I see in terms of numbers, because you'll notice you'll have a drop off, and that's because staking programs ended. And then you'll have a spike, and the spike is generally slightly higher than the drop off. So it does seem that way, but just not in real time. Thank you, Victor. Thanks for joining us. Remember, at one point you were going to leave the community. Thanks for sticking around. Great questions as always. It's 57 minutes and 51 seconds in. So, oh, wait a minute. I was jumping ahead of myself here. Thanks, Debbie. I appreciate you for being here. Thanks for supporting us for as long as you have. You've been with us for a long time. Yeah, Easter blessings to you and your family as well. Have a great rest of your Friday. Feels good to be on a Friday again. Great rest of your Friday, everybody. Good Friday if you're celebrating. Actually, every Friday is probably a good Friday, but this has got to be, I guess, the best Friday for some people. Have a good long weekend if you have the ability to have one. Some people have Friday and Monday off, so my God, Tuesday is going to be rough. See you guys on Telegram. You can tag me there at Kevin Murcko. You can also tweet me at Kevin Murcko. Hit me up if I missed your question, or if you have a question, or if you just want to know what's going on. Sometimes I miss it. Don't be afraid to keep on pinging me. Sometimes I see it, come back to it, and then it's gone because there's 50,000 messages in front of it. We'll keep chugging along here. I'm going to stop talking about what we're going to do, and you're just going to start seeing it. I think that's the best way. Just know that things are moving. Really appreciate everybody here and everybody that's not here, all our clients, all our present, future, and past clients, employees, the whole 9 yards. If it wasn't for everybody, we still wouldn't be here. We wouldn't still be here, I guess, is how I should say that. Anyway, buy some XCM. Tokenomics are showing their true form. Only 600,000 euros, by the way, between now and a euro. So keep that in mind. Gift Frenzy coming up next week. Make sure you participate. Have a great weekend, everybody. Cheers.